I can find what I was playing there. There we go. So yeah, that was kind of a fun blues. A little bit of a major minor thing going on there, and a lot of chord tones that I'm trying to hit, right? So, it goes on some different things. All right. Hey, GMAC, good to see you. New York Beaver, good to see you. All right. So, we're going to talk about Jangle Guitar. So, let's talk a little bit about that. So, Jangle Guitar, I think, with a lot of people, I don't know a lot of the modern Jangle Guitar, but I think a lot of people would say that it's a lot of the pop sound from the 90s on. So it's going to culminate in that, but it really started even earlier than the Beatles. So I'm going to take us a little bit through some things that I think are kind of jangly, and bear with me because I just learned pretty much all of them this morning. So unlike, I wasn't sleeping in, as somebody said. But it's characterized by a very trebly sound, a lot of open notes, and a guitar that's usually like a single coil, or a Rickenbacker is kind of the those kind of Rickenbacker toaster pickups are kind of similar. So I've got a few guitars out here. I've got my Telly, obviously. I've got this guitar. I've got this guitar, which is not normally a Jangle guitar, but it's got these pickups in here, which are more like Retrotrons or Filtertrons, gold foil pickups. They're kind of like that, so they give a real trebly sound. So I'll do a little bit on this guitar, and then I've got for the specials at the end, I've got this. Which is my Squire Jag knockoff there. So anyway, we've got that. Maybe I'll start out with the. Should I start out with the Telly? I'll start out with this. Anyway, here's the guitar that you shouldn't be using on that. You shouldn't use a Les Paul for this sort of thing. You could use a Strat. A lot of people use Strats to do these, to do sort of jangle. And you're playing with a clean sound. Almost always you're playing with a clean sound. Let me get my my guitar strap here. You're almost always playing with a clean sound, and sometimes a little bit of chorus on that. Although the early stuff didn't have that as much, or actually at all, right? So yeah, if you want to think of it, you can think of sort of like, we'll play this a little later, but. Sometimes there's a lot of arpeggiation too, right? All right, so that was not really jangly, so we'll make it sufficiently jangly. Very trebly, right? Get Together, that song by the Youngbloods, is another one of those jangle sort of songs. I wish I would have thought about that this morning and prepped it. All right, so let's kind of take us through. I'm going to try and take us through a little bit of some of the licks using. I don't want to flip the guitars too much, but I'll use the different guitars. By the way, I got a lot of interesting comments on the Strat video yesterday. A couple of dislikes, which are kind of hilarious. What, do you want me to not like the Strat? Okay, whatever. But this, I'm using 3 scales today. This guitar has a 24-inch scale length. This guitar has is a normal Gibson scale length, 24 3/4, and of course the Telly has 25 1/2. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. All right, so let's see if you can sort of name these licks. I'm going to try and play them the best I can. So here we go. Here's kind of when I'm going to kind of progress through time if we can. Let's try this again. Yep, that's Buddy Holly, Words of Love. Feel a little bit. Feels a little bit out to me. Let's see if I can get a. Where's my tuner? See, this is why you want to put your tuner on the headstock, because it's always there. And if you're not using a, I'm sitting down and I need that. All right, so. It's the G string, yeah. There we go. Huh. This must go out of tune pretty easily. All right, there we go. By the way, I think I said I saw a video of Greg Koch playing, and he had the tuner on the whole time on his headstock, so I'm not going to worry about that at all. All right, so that one was Buddy Holly, Words of Love. Let's see. We're going to go a little bit further on this one. All right, here's another one which I think is also very early sort of jangle rock, is this one. It's just a big beginning to 8 days a week, right? Yeah. So that's a great jangle tune. That beginning is a great jangle tune. Let's try this one now. Let's try that again. Right, Ticket to Ride. Okay, very easy one. Let me see if I can turn the volume down a little bit. A little bit too loud. It's a little bit louder than the other one was because the pickups are a little bit powerful. There we go. Let's see. Let's see. Where was my next one? Okay, yeah. See if I can do this one. Yeah. This is a tough one to do on anything but a 12 string. Right? So. Exactly. So I think, if you want to get that jangle sound, when you're playing this, you can also play the D on the top and let that go instead of just playing. You can play. That way you're just kind of letting things ring out. And that's another characteristic of Jangle Guitar, is you're letting things ring out all the time, right? The Byrds did a lot of that stuff, and of course Roger McGuinn had that 12 string that he used a lot to great effect. Also cool stuff. Yeah. I feel a whole lot better by the Byrds. I'm not really familiar with the Byrds music that much, TBA, so I'm going to have to check that out. Hey, Fessler61, good to see you. All right, let's see if we can move a little bit down in, I don't know, this is about the same time period, but I'm trying to do them kind of in time period. Let's try this one. So, this band kind of did a little bit of the dark side of Jangle. So I'll try and play the song, but a lot of chords. This is the same for a lot of them. And then I'll play a couple of things that this guitarist did. So let's see if we can do this song. So it starts out with a single chord. I don't mind all the guys dancing with my girl. Bells shine. I can't. Wait, it's a D, right? Yeah, he's got that D up there. Sorry about that. Sorry about subjecting you to my voice there. But Townsend loved that sort of jangle stuff, and he loved keeping a pedal note, which is another thing that's kind of common in jangle music. So you'll hear a lot of Townsend doing this kind of stuff. Right? You'll hear a lot of that kind of stuff. Anyway, and he's got a lot of that top note stuff. Yeah, Can't Explain is a bit like that too. Yeah, sorry I played that so crappy. All right. You kind of need Keith Moon's drumming come in for that one, I think. All right. You know, that's another characteristic. I didn't think of it until now. But a lot of jangle guitar parts are really, they don't stand by themselves really well, but when added with other things, they're great. And I'll try to do a couple of those justice a little bit later. All right, so let's see what's next on my list here. Oh, yeah, sure. So here's another one. Maybe I ought to switch to the telly at this point. Yeah, maybe not. We'll do it after this one. Right. That's right. That's right, the Monkees. Last Train to Clarksville. All right. I'm going to shift now, and we'll move on with this guitar. I like this guitar a lot. Interesting. It plays great. All right. Let's see. Let's shift to this one. There's one I definitely have to do with this one. All right, let's see if we can get this in screen. There we go. Maybe I ought to plug it in. All right, let's see here. All right, here we go. Here's a little bit more modern one. We're progressing through the years. So here's a bit more modern one. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to play the bass part there too. It's got that, that part there. And drums are coming in so cool. That right there is a great example of how it's just a single part, right? And you've got just playing an octave with the open drone. Again, very, very common. We're just playing the same notes all the time. We play the open D, then a D on the 7th, then block the next string, and then play the D on the 10th. So you're just playing a bunch of Ds, including an open note. Great stuff. So cool. Yeah. All right. Petty stuff never grabbed you. Well, yeah, not everybody likes him, but he's an original guy, for sure. All right, let's move on a little bit. One of these I already did. So we're getting a little more modern. So I'm going to put on the chorus on this one, which is kind of another... Let me turn down the depth a little and the speed. There we go. That's not too bad. But when you get more into the late 70s and 80s, you get that chorusy sound. And so this band certainly had that. So I think we already did this one. that beginning thing is so cool. So simple and so really satisfying. All right, so we did that one. And then the Pretenders had a lot of that stuff. Another one of their famous ones is this one, right? Right? Hey, RMG. Good to see you. Yeah. So I like the Pretenders a lot. We'll finish up with a few others here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of an appropriate one. Now, unlike a lot of the songs, this is Jangle, but it's got some overdrive on it. I'm going to see if I can do this one justice. It's hard to do it justice without the rest of the band, but it's really a cool vibe. Their first song. And like I said, the guitar is kind of appropriate to do it on. Yeah. Yeah, REM. I don't really know REM very well, so I think I got some of the cadence out of that wrong, but that's such a classic Jangle riff, except that it's got, unlike a lot of things, it's got some distortion on it, which is very, very rare. Oops. Which is very, very rare for it. But it uses a lot of open strings. And it uses a lot of common tones. So that's pretty cool. All right. Let's see. All right. So let me try doing one more, and then we'll get on with our regular thing here. So this one I've got to do with this guitar because I've got it sitting out. So what the heck. And we'll talk about one last characteristic of a lot of Jangle rock, and that is a lot of Jangle rock players will use a capo. And so the first one I just learned this morning for this. I probably shouldn't have waited because it's kind of a tough riff, actually. And let's see. Oh, that's really harsh, isn't it? Something like this. Let's see if we can do it. Something like that. Something like that. What is that? Yeah, it's supposed to be the beginning to this charming man, but I just can't remember it. I just learned it this morning. It's really tough. It's a Johnny Marr sort of thing, and yeah, and it's got some really cool things that he's doing on that, and that's yet another characteristic of Jangle rock players. They don't just play usually block chords, or if they do, there's usually some open notes. Like the Tom Petty ringing stuff, or like some things like this. Open notes like that. But they're always seeking different ways of playing the chords. I want to end this with one more, and that would have that would have sounded better without the distortion that I left on. No wonder what was there. No wonder that was a problem. Okay, wow. Yeah, it sounds a little better without that distortion, doesn't it? just can't remember it. Crap. All right, well, this one I think I can remember, and we're going to try and do it that way. Oh, last characteristic. I know what I was looking for. Where is it? Hold on. Oh, bugger, you got to be kidding me. There it is. Last characteristic. A lot of jangle players use capos. Why? Because the singer might change key and you're relying upon open notes. So this one uses a capo at 2. But if you look at a lot of players who play jangle sort of rock, they'll have capos, right? So that's just to make sure that they can get those open notes in different keys that maybe the singer can't handle, right? Or can handle, right? So let's see if I can remember this one. Let's see if we can remember this one, yeah. Yeah. So there we go. There we go. I think that's about it for all the ones I wanted to play. That was I think Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. So that's about as far as my jangle rock goes. I could maybe go to that song by the La-Las or the Las. There She Goes, but that was the only hit that I know that they did. Anyway, all right. I am using just a regular trigger capo. That's it. Normal, simple capo. So let's see. Hey, Jeffrey Byron. Yeah, but yeah, this is pop too. Yeah, so I think, who are some other jangle rock groups that or songs that you know? I didn't play anything by The Cure, but The Cure did a bunch of them. I didn't play anything by Big Star, but Big Star certainly had a jangly sort of sound. I didn't play anything by Bryan Adams, but certainly they did. So David Smith asked, does funk count? I don't think it does. I think largely it doesn't because you've got. I'm not as comfortable with this guitar, by the way. I'm going to put on my telly. It's a little bit too heavy for me in this live stream. I'll put on my telly. Plus, I got to say I like the sound of it better. I think that the cheap pickups in this are better than the cheap pickups in that. Actually, it's probably not the pickups. It's probably the strings. I have round wounds. I mean, I have round wounds on these, but flat wounds on the other. So, hey, Crow Black, good to see ya. David McBlain, good to see you too. So yeah, with funk, you got a lot of scratchy sounds, and it does use a trebly clean guitar, however. So there's some similarity, but it's not as it's not as fluid or something. I don't know what the right answer is. It's more rhythmic, I think. I'd say. Ballad of El Goodo, Big Star, one of my favorite 70s songs. I love that. There's also Back of My Car, which I like a lot, and I like September Girls a ton. They're good. They're a good band. Yeah. Alan B says, love flat wounds on my bass. All right, well, anyway, so that's Jangle Rock. I may do some other things at some point later, because this is a live stream. We're just kind of like hanging out and doing this, but there you go. So let me see if we can see another few. How do you have Jealous Again in my catalog? Can I play Jealous Again? The answer is yes. I love Black Crowes. I actually like a lot of their later stuff, which was their that the one that was a big hit. That was I had a lot of Stones sounds on it, but then the later stuff to me sounded more like the band. Anyway, I like a lot of their stuff. It's great. Jealous Again's a good one. I think the only one I did was their version of Hard to Handle. That's the only one I did of theirs. But great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, I have flat wounds on the guitars that I am trying to get the sound vibe on it, and so I go for that one. I go for sort of an early '60s, on that one. She Talks to Angels, great song. Yep, open. That's got to be like open G or open D tuning, right? Must be. Elixirs. So yeah, we're talking about strings. Yeah, I used to use elixirs just because you change them and then you don't have to change them for a long time. So that's good. All right. Let's if we don't want to talk about Jangle anymore, I'm good with that. I do have a few things on the agenda for today. I don't have a quiz, but I did prepare a couple of things for us to talk about if you'd like to. So, yeah, a lot of people hating elixirs, I can see. Too cloudy sound. Yeah, I know what you mean. You change some elixirs, they're not quite there. They're not quite there. David McBlain says, open G. I'm guessing She Talks to Angels. Yeah. All right. So I want to ask people. So let's have I wanted to debate a little bit, maybe have a little bit of a discussion. My wife came up with a great idea, and I want to warm it up a little bit. And that is to ask you guys, to a certain extent, who are some of the more influential players, guitar players, that you can think of? Who are some of the more influential ones? And let's confine it to, rock and pop. No quiz today. No quiz. I know, I got a bunch of them. I just didn't feel like prepping the whole thing and getting everything ready and separating out the questions and reviewing everything. Okay, so Spardella Julio says Eric Clapton. Garrett says George, Jimmy, Keith, Eric, Jimmy. Jimmy with two M's and a Y. Brian May. John Lennon. Brian May, Jimmy Page. Okay. So that's pretty easy. And who are some people that they influenced? Who are some players today that are popular that you know of that they influenced or who are good? So many. Pete Townsend, Chuck Berry. Modern day would say John Mayer. Yeah. Tommy Alsop, don't know him. Oasis, Robin Trower, okay. George Lynch, Brian May, Robin Ford. Yeah, certainly. I don't know if he's quite a rock player. He's definitely a blues player and definitely modern. Joey B. Okay, so here's the game that we want to play. So what I want us to do is to name a player and then name his father. In other words, who is his major influence, and then his grandfather, or it could be grandmother too, right? So, you might say, I don't know, Christina, I'm making this stuff up, right? You might say Christina Aguilera was influenced by Janis Joplin, and she was influenced by Big Mama Thornton, right? So it goes back to Big Mama Thornton. Or you might say, you take Bruce Springsteen and his music. You might say, well, Bruce Springsteen was influenced by Dylan, pretty heavily influenced by Dylan, and then Dylan was heavily influenced by Woody Guthrie, right? So Woody Guthrie is really maybe the biggest influencer there. So that's kind of interesting. So if you take a guitar player, name their biggest influence, and then name their influence's influence. Does that make sense? The idea is to go two back, because otherwise you end up with people like Clapton and Beck and stuff like that. And sometimes the influential people we've forgotten about. I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see. I think it's a good game. Okay, so we could say Clapton was influenced by B.B. King, and B.B. King was influenced by Robert Johnson. I'm not sure if Robert Johnson was B.B. King's influence. I don't know that, but the idea is that's the way you're going. So Chuck Berry was influenced by T-Bone, and T-Bone was influenced by Charlie Christian. Maybe. There you go. Black Crowes influenced by the Stones or by Keith Richards, and Keith Richards influenced by Chuck Berry. Pat Metheny. All right, we could say Pat Metheny. He's not much of a rock player, but okay. Yes. So David McBlain, I think you're seeing the point, is that Robert Johnson might be the most influential player. Guys like Leadbelly, Robert Johnson, and maybe many people who are unknown because we don't write their history. We don't have their music. We have a little bit of Robert Johnson's, but not much. Yeah, Joe Bonamassa, influenced by Albert King. That's a good one right there. Or Gary Moore, and Gary Moore influenced by Albert King. That's good. Or Gary Moore influenced by Peter Green. Interesting. Huh. That's all right. No problem, GMAC. Mick Taylor. So Paul St. Jean influenced by Mick Taylor. And then who was Mick Taylor influenced by? Oh. Well, but you have to pick one. So, it's interesting. It makes you think, right? So if you pick, so say you pick, I'm talking to Geertz now. Geertz says John Paul were influenced by everybody, every type of music. That obviously can't be true, but they were influenced by a broad musical palette. But if you pick one, if you say, well, Paul was influenced by Buddy Holly, and who was Buddy Holly influenced by? Probably, Fats Domino, people like that. Right? Yeah, if you pick somebody modern like Buckethead, Buckethead was influenced by Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert was influenced by the Beatles, right? Or Paul Gilbert was influenced by Robin Trower. Robin Trower was influenced by Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was influenced by Curtis Mayfield, or was influenced by other blues players. Huh. I think it's fun to do this because it gets us to think about who are all the people that are kind of forgotten by history, like Leadbelly, for example, right? I mean, the whole skiffle music that exploded in the 50s with Lonnie Donegan was basically influenced by Leadbelly. Everybody was trying to pretend that they were Leadbelly, play these Leadbelly songs. And, that influenced a lot of early rock and roll for sure. And what's interesting about that is that Leadbelly originally played a lot of songs that came from the British Isles and migrated to the U.S. and to the South, and then he played them. Anyway, it's kind of cool. The reason I like it is because it just shows kind of we're all connected and all this stuff is connected. Dig it. All right. Curtis Mayfield, Jimi Hendrix, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. All right. Carlos was influenced by Tito Puente. Carlos was also heavily influenced by B.B. King. Muddy Waters, Elmore James. I don't know, and you won't know, and I'm wondering by that. Mark Zabel influenced by all. Yeah, of course. It's hard to be original. I'm a very derivative player. I just play a lot of what I hear. Knopfler, influenced by Marvin Weldon. I don't even know who that is. And then who was Marvin Weldon influenced by? Carlos was influenced by Peter Green. Peter Green influenced by probably, one of the three kings. A lot of the three kings really influenced by Albert, Freddie King, and BB King really influenced a lot. I mean, I think BB King really kind of invented modern guitar playing in terms of the making the guitar sound like a human voice, and doing the bends and things like that. I think he was the one who really invented it. T-Bone was getting there, but he tried to do the sustain stuff, BB King. And obviously Freddie did it as well. Freddie's my personal favorite. I love listening to Freddie King. He's put everything into every performance. You could tell he's going to die young. Which is not, I shouldn't laugh about that because he did die young. But boy, I mean, watching his performances from the early 70s, he's just like, it's got everything into it. It's just amazing. Oh, now Geert's just showing off. George was influenced by Ravi Shankar, who was influenced by Baba Alauddin Khan. I wouldn't know that. Ron Shack by Mark Zabel. That's funny. All right. Anyway, but that's good. That's good. I mean, it shows you that there's all these different influences that are kind of around, and it goes all over the place, right? Yeah, I know. I know Geert could go on forever on that stuff. He knows a ton of it. All guitarists in the late 60s were influenced by the Kings. Yeah, agreed. Yep. All right. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. All right. Well, I wanted to talk about maybe we'll do one more debate, and I wanted us to talk a little bit about different eras. And when you think about guitar, decades are kind of an artificial way of thinking about it. That's one of the reasons why I like Neil Young's decade is it doesn't span the 70s or the 60s or 70s. It's in between. But if we talk about decades, right, we've got the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, etc. Which decade do you think was better for rock guitar? Now, just let's think about rock, okay? Rock guitar. Which one do you think was better, the 1960s or the 1970s? And why? Well, let's start out with which do you think is better? So Geert says the 60s. Paul St. Jean says the 70s had many guitar guys. David Gilmour influenced by. I don't know who he was influenced by, but definitely some other people. Oh, Ron says he wants to hear the Fish story. 70s were the best. 70s, 60s, more innovation. Okay, so I want you to think. So clearly we're split on this, right? In terms of what decade was better. So I'd like you to think about why while I tell you this Fish story. So this happened like a couple of weeks ago. There's a guy who emailed me and he wanted to know. I told him there was a Fish story and I'd say it in the live stream. People know I fish as much as I possibly can. It looks like it's going to rain pretty heavily today, so I won't be able to get out. I got out yesterday. It wasn't so good. But a couple of weeks ago, I was fishing in it just goes to show you how silly I am. So I'm fishing in a lake that the main game fish are bass and pickerel, okay? And it has a bunch of panfish. It has a bunch of trout in the summer. You can get them up. I don't have downriggers. I'm getting already too deep. I don't have downriggers, so I can't get super deep with them. It's the lake's about 100 feet. So I'm just doing surface fishing near the shore, bass and pickerel. Okay, so it's getting near the end of the day, and I've only gotten like tiny pickerel and a couple of decent bass. And at the very, very end, I hooked this fish, and I think it's a big fish, right? And it is. It turns out it's a big fish. It's a huge pickerel, and I'm pulling it in. It's pulling out line, and I get it up to the boat. I've got my I recently got BOGO grips, so I don't cut my hand all up. I'm worried about the live stream on Sundays, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is really a huge pickerel. This is the biggest of the day. Then I'm thinking this is probably the biggest that I've caught, and then I'm thinking, man, this is probably a state record. This might be a state record. This is the biggest pickerel I've ever seen. And then it dawned on me, it wasn't a pickerel, it was a pike. It's just so stupid. It's like shooting a deer and thinking, oh my God, I've got the world record deer, and then realizing you shot an elk. So, anyway, spin cast or fly fishing. I was spin casting this time. In summers, I typically spin fish. I used to make my own flies and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that anymore. So, anyway, that's it. Oh, a fish story. No, it wasn't that. It was a real fish story. I know it's kind of boring, but it just goes to show you. I mean, like, you can fool yourself so easily thinking it's something is great in a category, and you realize it's a different fish. Now, don't get me wrong. I was happy to get a pike, but it was an ordinary pike, ordinary adult pike. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. So when we're talking about the 70s, oh yeah, so Nemo brings up a good point. So the 70s had progressive rock, which the 60s really didn't have. Yeah, Scooter C. Yeah, I throw back all my fish, unless I kill them. And I guess in the early spring, if it's stocked trout, I'll take home trout. But I don't kill wild fish. I let them breed. Throw them back in, let them have lots of babies, so I can fish again. For the most part. All right. Let's see. That's an interesting point. So I think it's also been made that the 60s had it was more experimental, so they didn't have a lot of the things that had already solidified in the 70s. So Scooter C says the 60s Brit invasion defined rock for 2 decades. That's a good point. It largely did. You had the pop side with the Beatles, and then you had the rock side. Plus, you had the Beach Boys too, right? The Beach Boys helped define pop, anyway. Yeah, David McBlain. I mostly catch and release fish. Yeah, mostly. I mean, I don't get down on people who don't. Unless they're catching wild and like taking home 30 of them, way above their limit. That's not cool. But if you're sticking to the limits, that's fine. Whatever. It's just something I do. We ain't got nothing yet. The Blues Magoos. I've heard some of that stuff. Yeah. I think TBA, you were the one who showed me that. Tone Seeker says, but the 50s had good rock. The 50s did, but we're trying to limit ourselves to 60s and 70s. The 50s is arguably the best, right? I mean, you can argue that Chuck Berry was the 50s, Buddy Holly was the 50s, skiffle music which was the seeds of rock and roll, was there. Yep. All rock is blues based, pop less so. That's true. Well, if you count heavy metal, I don't know. I don't know if that's considered rock, right? I don't know. Some of that's influenced by, people will argue that that's influenced by classical. I'm not a fan of that genre of music. Pretty much all of it. I don't like the big hair music so much. Ted Boy Marino. I'm not a native English speaker. Could you please explain quickly what is Jangle Guitar? Sure. So that gets back to the beginning of what we were talking about. Ted Boy. It's a style of guitar that's usually associated with pop, where you're playing a lot of ringing notes and a lot of open notes, and it's usually very trebly sounded. Let me try and approximate this. So you might play something like this. Stuff like that. Some players who were jangle rock in the early years were, like the Beatles did some stuff like that, like 8 Days a Week, Beginning, or Ticket to Ride. The Byrds are associated with that. Mr. Tambourine Man's a good example. And then later in the 80s, you might associate it with like the Pretenders or the Smiths. And a lot of 90s sort of indie rock has kept a lot of that stuff. It uses a lot of jangly sort of stuff too. Yeah, Scooter. See, I agree. Every classical guitarist seems to love metal. Well, every metal guitarist seems to love classical. I'm not sure every classical guitarist loves metal. I know some classical guitarists who despise metal, uh, but uh, but yeah, metal is well. A lot of times they're playing those fast arpeggios over and over to shred, right? Yep. So Tone Seeker makes a great part. Yeah, clean arpeggiated. David Smith says too. That's a good point to keep from. Right. Um, yeah, that's right, Ted Boy, from Marino. Um, let's see. Tone Seeker makes a great point that a lot of the people that influenced a lot of the guitar players who influenced the 70s heavily really grew up in the 60s. Two of the favorites are Jimmy, who influenced guitar for a long time. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he was very short but heavily influential. And then Jimmy Page as well was very influential. Started in the 60s. But there's other guys too. There's Clapton, who was very influential. No question about that. Peter Green, to a certain extent, was very influential. But Clapton, certainly. And then, obviously, people don't talk about it, but George Harrison was amazingly influential. Immensely influential. If you think about it, the Beatles probably were the most influential and copied band in the history of pop, for sure. Carl Brown, who is oh, must be talking about its instructor. uh, Beatles and Dylan were the most important elements in turning pop into rock. Whoa. What about Chuck Berry? But in the 60s or 70s, sure. Mr. Tangerine Man, play a song for me. Uh, Rick Beato has done different decades of guitars. Yeah, I have to check that out. I have to see. It's kind of fun. That's the stuff that I like of Rick Beato. By the way, I just want to make a point. I think, and I'm doing the Rick Beato list of the intros, and I'm adding my own. There was somebody who commented on. Clearly, they didn't like Rick Beato, and I'm trying to be diplomatic about this. I don't want to come down on anybody. If you like his style or don't like his style, guy clearly knows an unbelievable amount of theory, and he does some interesting things, and he knows his stuff. So anybody who's making it, doing this kind of stuff is good. So I'm never going to come down on people like that unless they're really nasty. Um, I make fun of the whole tuner thing because he came down on people for having a tuner, which I didn't dig that about him or about when he did that. But he seems to be okay with it. Whatever. Okay, you can have a pet peeve here and there. That's all right. I just like it's better if you have a pet peeve and don't come down on people. All right. Angus Young was a huge Chuck Berry fan. Yeah. Ted Nugent is a huge Chuck Berry fan as well. I see, TBA. Carl Brown's first love is classical. You mean Carl Brown, the Guitar 365 guy? Great teacher, by the way. His first love is classical, and he loves metal. Is that right? Okay. Got it. Got it. Yeah. The people that I know that are classical players, I know a number of classical people from Ithaca College and from other places. I don't know any of them who like metal, but there's got to be some, and you just named one. Sisson B, I think Rick is a great educator. He definitely knows what he's talking about. He definitely knows what he's talking about. If you want theory, he's got it. He's got it for sure. I like the beginnings of his videos, I have to say. The first 5 minutes I can get something out. After that it gets too technical for me. I don't enjoy it. But if that's your thing, then definitely he's got it. Rick and Sean Daniel made up. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think they maybe tolerate each other. I know there was this thing at GitCon or whatever last time where they talked to each other. That's fine. It's good. They should get along. They should get along. Berkeley education. No, I don't think so. I don't think he went to Berkeley. I think he did a lot of it on his own. He did it at Ithaca College, is where he studied. I think he was from Rochester, Rochester, New York area. I think he is where he came from. And he did that. He taught it at Ithaca for a while, or they had some relationship at Ithaca College for a while. All right, let's see. Deep Purple formed in '68. Is that right? Wilf Sidekick, hey. Deep Purple. Can I call Mark Knopfler's, Ted asked, can I call Mark Knopfler's early clean style jangly? I guess so. It's not so, I guess so. I don't think most people would put it that way, just because it's got sort of more bluesy elements. It's less poppy, but it certainly has things like that. Like if you listen to Making Movies, there's a lot of, he's playing with a very trebly guitar. He's playing a lot of open notes. So could classify. Yngwie Malmsteen was heavily influenced by Flat and Scruggs. G-Mac, are you pulling my leg? I remember reading a thing of his, and it said, his influences were this long, and he buried Jimi Hendrix in there amongst all the Mozart, Shostakovich, Paganini. Yeah. Yeah, I know a bunch of people in town who knew and still know Rick Beato, so that's why I knew we went to Ithaca. Yeah, Beato's from Rochester. Yep. Communique, maybe. I'm not familiar with that, Ted. Yngwie Rolex. Okay. All right. Just making sure. Because, Flat and Scruggs could, some of the modern bluegrassers, they can play rings around just about anybody in terms of speed. They're unbelievable. Brian Sutton, listen to that guy. Your jaw will drop. I don't like speed that much. I much prefer Norman Blake and Doc Watson and Charles Sawtelle and Clarence White. I thought they were fantastic players, and I just love their style a lot. Tony Rice to a certain extent as well, but Brian Sutton's unbelievable. Yeah, it's kind of like the guy who does Chris Teal or Teely. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The guy who took over from Garrison Keillor did that show. He's a Mando player. Unbelievable chops. Just great chops. Yeah, Making Movies. My favorite. Making Movies. Love bluegrass without the dang banjo rolls. Well, my good friend Chris, who still does work with Ithaca College today. He's a good friend of Beato's, and that's where he grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, playing bluegrass. But he's the best jazz player I know, and best theory guy I know. And but he just started playing. He played with his family from the age of 5, and played with all these sorts of people on the road. So he came to theory through that. He did his stint on the road first, and then he decided to kind of look back and do the theory. He's an amazing classical player too. Scooter, you're from Asheville. Okay, cool. And you can't stand the banjo rolls, huh? Wow. All right. Well, no accounting for it. Let's see if I can play a credible banjo. I can kind of do a banjo roll. All right. Had a great friend. I like Dire Straits' first record best. Yeah, for me, it's interesting. People always say Knopfler. Now, I mentioned Knopfler the other day as Strat players. He's one of my favorite players from the '80s. Maybe my favorite player from the '80s. I don't know. I probably have others I'm not thinking of right now. But the clean tone, and he didn't play overly fast. Jerry Donahue, yeah. Um, but I love his solo on Tunnel of Love. I think that's one of the top rock pop solos ever. I think it's better than his other one, the Sultans of Swing, yeah. Uh, anyway, that's just my opinion, obviously, but that one's got so much. It's got a decent amount of technique, but it's got so much feeling in that. Anemo Unknown, see you. Okay, see you all in several weeks. Sounds good. George Formby's banjo playing. On which films? George Formby. I don't know. I don't know him. Jerry Donahue was really great. I mean, he was an incredible player. So, Banjalele. Okay, Banjalele. Banjalele. Telegraph Road solo's great. Yeah, I agree, Citizen B. Totally agree. Jeffrey Zabel. Mark played all with Chet Atkins. Hey, Jeffrey. Hey, Jeff. How you doing, buddy? Long time no talk. Been a while. Glad you could join. Where's Nemo going? I don't know. He's gone, maybe. But we'll see. Yeah, anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up today. We had some fun playing Jangle, and if that is the Jeffrey Zabel that I think it is, and I hope it is, he's a better singer than I could ever be, and I didn't play any sort of acoustic Jangle. He's great at acoustic Jangle, so maybe next time we can talk a little bit on some time. But anyway. Let's see. Chet played with many players. Yeah, that was a thing with Chet. I have a friend who says Chet handicapped himself by using a thumb pick. He said it's sacrilege to say it, but Chet would have been a better player had he not used a thumb pick. Interesting. All right. Telegraph Road. So I think we're talking about Dire Straits a lot now, and I dig Dire Straits. But it is 1:18, and I think I'm going to get on with my Sunday. Thanks a lot. Hey, G-Mac. No, I have a brother, Jeff, and I'm guessing that's my brother. I'm guessing that's my brother. I'm hoping it's my brother. That'd be cool if he's on. I know we've talked a little bit. He's good. He's a good musician. Really good singer. Um, let's see. I agree, Garrett. Romeo and Juliet is perhaps a perfect song. I think it's close to a perfect song. I just love it. That guitar at the end, where I think he's using like uh, a National Steel. It's just so beautiful what he does there. Just so cool. Hey, Jeff. I'm glad. I'm glad you're on, man. I'm glad you're on. Awesome. We went through me hacking up a ton of intros today playing Jangle Guitar. So if you want to listen to me screwing up, you can listen to the beginning of the video. All right. All right. Well, yeah, I think I am gonna head off, and I just want to say thanks to everybody. And thanks for the support. I had one of my best friends die this week. It's unfortunate. Actually, my best friend from college days, but we also went to high school together. And I gotta call his mom and see what's going on. Happened, but he died of cancer this week, and it just kind of gets you thinking. Anyway, he was a great guy, and he was one of these guys who was larger than life. He was like six. He was 6'7", or maybe on a good day 6'6", and just like 350 pounds, huge man, huge smile, and just a bigger heart. But it's just a shame. It's too bad. I'll miss him. I'll miss him for sure. Yeah, it's I'm of the age that happens. So yeah, it's a bummer. His mom's still living, right? So that's kind of a bummer. Not a bummer that she's living, but that you live your children is not always fun. So, or it can't be fun. Um, but he was great. He was not one of my bandmates, so we don't have the guitar in common. But I'm going to check on that stuff, and that's all right. It's okay. We're all there, and we've all had it happen. And so anyway, we'll see you next week. I'll try and think of a good topic to teach, and then we'll be back with a quiz. As TBA reminded me, I've got like 20 of them from him. I've got to get them into the right format, and that's about it. So we'll do it. We'll do the quiz next week, and yeah. So we'll see you next Sunday. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for being on, for sharing your Sunday with me, and we'll see you down the road. Bye bye.